Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. This is my second presentation in the class Islam and Contemporary Issues, talking about an article written by Hassan At-Turabi. Actually, in this article he tried to describe the universal characteristics of an Islamic state, which derive, as he said, from the teachings of the Quran and embodied in the political practice of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Let's first take a glance at the writer. Hassan Abdullah Turabi, from 1932 to 2016, was a Sudanese politician. He has been called one of the most influential figures in modern Sudanese politics and a long-time hardline ideological leader. He was instrumental in institutionalizing Sharia Islamic law in the northern part of the country and was frequently imprisoned in Sudan. At-Turabi was leader of the National Islamic Front (NIF), which changed its name to National Congress in the late 1990s, a political movement that developed considerable political power in Sudan. Turabi and the NIF reached the peak of their power from 1989 following a military coup until 2001. In fact, as an Islamic scholar, he brought forward very controversial topic concerning the state and the relationship with the non-Muslims. As the beginning or an introduction for this presentation, he says Islam is a comprehensive, integrated way of life. The first point, the Islamic State can't be isolated from society. There is no division between private and public, the state and society. So the state must present the will of people or of the people, of its people who espouse the Islamic religion. The state is the political expression of an Islamic society. Any attempt at establishing a political order for the establishment of a genuine Islamic society would be the superimposition of laws over a reluctant society. The fifth point, the nature of religion based on sincere conviction and voluntary compliance. He says that this is the nature of religion and this is the way that the state should deal with its people, so there shouldn't be any kind of political suppression over society, otherwise it builds up, erupts, or revolution. The consequences of an Islamic state based on the fundamental principle of belief, Tawheed. The ideological foundation of an Islamic state lies in the doctrine of Tawheed, a comprehensive and exclusive program of worship, which has many consequences for an Islamic state. He is talking about the results of this fundamental principle, Tawheed. The first one, it's not secular. All public life in Islam is religious, being permitted by the experience of the divine, expressed in a concrete way in the Sharia. So in Islam we have no division between the religion and the state, like the secular world does. The second point, an Islamic state is not a nationalistic state because the ultimate allegiance is owed to God and thereby to the community of all believers, the Ummah. The third result, an Islamic state is not an absolute or sovereign entity. It's subject to the higher norms of the Sharia that represent the will of God, Politically, this rules out all forms of absolutism. The fourth one, an Islamic state is not primordiya. The primary institution in Islam is the Ummah. The state is only the political dimension of the collective endeavor of Muslims. So, as he sees, the state government or the state or the government is a secondary institution, represents the Ummah. Okay, the next one. Let's go to the next one, talking about or have a question here. Can an Islamic government have a multi-party system or a single party system? There is no. The answer is, as he sees, there is no legal bar to the development of different parties or to the freedom of opinion and debate. A well-developed Islamic society would probably not be conducive to the growth of rigid parties, wherein one stands by one's party whether it's wrong or right. An Islamic government should function more as a consensus-oriented rather than a minority-majority system, with political parties rigidly confronting each other over decisions. So he focused on the function of the parties, not the legitimacy of the party or of the party's existence in the Islamic State. What are the functions of an Islamic government? The functions that fulfill the aims of Islamic life pertain primarily to society. An Islamic government is bound to exercise all powers necessary for providing a minimum of the basic conditions of Muslim life. The actual scope of government depends on society, and this is a really good point here. The actual scope of government depends on society. An Islamic government acting for society is not a totalitarian one. However, in many ways, an Islamic government is a very limited government for these reasons. The first reason, not every aspect of Islam is entrusted to government to enforce. The second one, most aspects of Islam or Islamic life are subject or private, are outside the domain of law as applied by governments. The third reason, government has no business interfering. And the fourth, Muslim jurists have effectively deprived government of many means of exploitation, like imposing taxes. And you see, the third and fourth point or reason are very interesting point. What are the frontiers of government vis-a-vis society and the individual? The Sharia provides an arbiter between social order and individual freedom. And it's a good point really concerning the previous issue we talked about, Islam and the freedom of individual in the previous topic. The aims and means of government correspond to that of society, being related to religion and based on the Sharia. Furthermore, the individual was largely free because the lawmaking and financial powers were limited, so there was not any intolerable oppression. Even though the particular caliph might be a usurper, he was not a totalitarian absolute dictator. The individual has the right to his physical existence, general social well-being, reputation, peace, privacy, to education and a decent life. These are rights that the state ought to provide and guarantee for fulfillment of the religious ideals of life. Freedom of religion and of expression should also be guaranteed and encouraged. When should the Muslims revolt? He put here a criterion of when the Muslims should revolt against the government. He says, if the government becomes so alien as transcend the Sharia, the individual has the right and obligation to revolt. This is the revolutionary element in Islam. Muslims' ultimate obedience is to God alone. Here I would like to hear from you, my colleagues. He is talking about transcending the Sharia is the criterion to revolt. What's your opinion? In my opinion, the criterion is to forbid and prevent the religious aspects in the general atmosphere, like preventing people, for example, from performing their prayers or any kind of worship. This is the criterion, not it's transcending the Sharia. I would like to hear from you in this issue. There is the representative institutions in an Islamic government. It all depends, he says, that it all depends on the particular historical circumstances as follows. And I put them here as stages, historical stages, just to be easy for understanding. The first stage, in the period of the Prophet, all the functions of the state were exercised by him as teacher and sovereign. He wisely but informally consulted with his companions. The second stage, later this consultative process was almost developed into an indirect representative institution called Ahl al-Shura or Majlis al-Shura, Consultative Council. The third stage, or we are talking here in the current time, today this could very well be formulated through a parliament, through referendum, or otherwise delegate power to their deputies. And I have here another question. What do you think? Do you think that the formulation of parliament in the present time resembles the form of consultation of the Prophet with his companions, or the council of consultation, Shura, in later time? I think no, it doesn't. And referring to my voice note this morning, I think this is the most probable and possible idea that could be applied. A fundamental principle of Islamic constitutional law. The first one, most modern and contemporary constitutional theory tends to vest political leadership in one individual and not in a collegiate body. The second one, in the Islamic State, whatever form the executive may take, a leader is always subject both to the Sharia and to the consensus formulated under it. 3. The leader enjoys no special immunities and can, therefore, be prosecuted or sued for anything he does in his private or public life. And here we have another question that I would like to hear its answer exclusively from you. Do you agree with second and third Turabi's point of view? If yes, have examples. If no, why? The role of the judiciary the role of the judiciary in the administration of the Islamic State. It plays an extremely important role in an Islamic state because of the special legalistic nature of the political order, which is organized in accordance with a strict hierarchy hierarchy with a strict hierarchy of norms. Judges as the guidance or the guardians of the Sharia adjudicate in all matters of law. Actually, these words I repeated or I have repeated them many times, but no solution for them. Early Muslims were very keen to provide judges with a generous income to protect them against temptation and to allow them a very large degree of autonomy with broad powers to administer justice. The status of non-Muslims in the Islamic State. He mentioned here the rights of the non-Muslims or the minority in the Islamic State. The first right, the non-Muslims have a guaranteed right to their religious conviction, to profess and defend their own convictions, and even to criticize Islam and engage in a dialogue with Muslims. The second one, non-Muslims also have the right to regulate their private life, education, and family life by adopting their own family laws. There can be a very large degree of legal and political decentralization under an Islamic government. The third point, Muslims are bound to relate to non-Muslims minorities positively. It's more than a matter of tolerance and legal immunity. Muslims have a moral obligation to be fair and friendly in their person-to-person conduct toward non-Muslim citizens and will be answerable to God for that. I think he's referring to the verse which says, Allah does not forbid you to deal justly and kindly with those who fought not against you on account of religion, nor drove you out of your homes. Verily, Allah loves those who deal with equity. In Arabic, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. The fourth point, they must be treated with trust, beneficence, and equity. This is the end of my presentation. I hope that you gain the benefits from it. May Allah protect you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.